Welcome back to Casuals Encounters, episode 7, if anyone's back home counting, joined by myself, Will, at Casuals Corner MMA, and Leo Cooper from A Casuals Guide 2 on the YouTube channel. And today, we could go over UFC Vegas 77, and it was pretty exciting. It did have some fun fights. It did have some fun finishes. But we do what we want on this podcast, and realistically we want to get stuck into UFC London because that is the gem in every British MMA fan's diary. But before we do that, I just want to get your thoughts on a couple of headlines from across the globe this week, because there's been a couple of big ones, to be honest. I'm going to throw some out here and get your hot takes. So first one, I'm not sure on the timeline of this, but pretty recent, we haven't spoken about it. Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one. I think it's not that. It just feels like, I mean, I don't think I'm alone in this opinion, but to me it feels like every week that goes by, I just begin to like Tyson Fury less and less and less. You know, back in the day before he had his that dramatic return to boxing when he was overcoming all those issues and struggles. You know, a lot of people didn't like him then. And he and then gradually became a favourable character, began speaking about mental health and all that stuff. And obviously that inspiring trilogy fights against Wilder. And I think that put him in like the positive light. But what we've seen is the classic move in boxing over the recent last 2 years, just negotiations that go nowhere. It's all politics. I think that's gradually just dampened his image. And I think to duck a guy like Usyk, which, let's be real, that's what he's done. You know, he kept moving the goalposts for negotiations, and now we're here and he's fighting Francis Ngannou, which is an entertaining fight. But the fact it's even been allowed is, I think it's a bit ridiculous. I think you should let the sport move, let the people fight for the belts and let them chart their legacies. But we're getting that sort of stopped for, let's be real, what it is. It's a gimmick fight. That's what it is. Yeah.
So you give no chance to Francis Ngannou above the obvious one.
I mean, of course he's got a chance, doesn't he?
Above the obvious. I mean, actual fighting. Let's talk a boxing match. They're going at it for 8 rounds. You're saying unless something crazy happens, he's not going to win that fight.
No, absolutely not. I'm not. I think you just need to put yourself in the common sense shoes, if that makes any sense. You got to think of it realistically. Tyson Fury is, as much as I don't like him currently, I think he's probably the best heavyweight, you know, in the modern era, in boxing. And Ngannou, while he can hit like a truck, Wilder could do the same, and he's a miles better boxer. So, I think you just have to be realistic here. It's not gonna. There's a chance, and that's obviously the selling point of the fight. That's why it will sell, and that's why they're getting paid a lot. But the reality is, it's Tyson Fury's fight to win, and really he's taking it for a payday instead of continuing to actually chart a legacy that people are going to remember.
I think a point in the conversation which a lot of people are missing, that I'm seeing online when they speak about Francis Ngannou and this whole Tyson Fury saga, is this is the best fight to make as his first fight in boxing. I've heard Eddie Hearn speak about it before, but essentially when you're selling that pay-per-view and when you're building the event and when you're brandishing the event, you're selling it on the unknown. You're selling it on the power punch. You're selling it on the baddest man on the planet. So we don't want him to come in there and have a tune-up fight or an easier opponent. He needs to go in and fight Tyson Fury. Off the bat, he's doing it for 30 or so million. Happy to see that he's getting that payday. And of course as well, I think it's a lot less of a gimmick fight per se as a lot of other fights out there, because when you look at it on paper, Francis Ngannou started as a boxer. He started in a boxing realm. He always wanted to be a boxer. It's documented out there for his entire career. So he's always had an eye on it. He's always worked hard with Eric Nixick on his boxing, and we've seen how much has improved over time. Not saying it's closed the skill gap of a lifetime and generations of bare knuckle fighting like Tyson Fury, but I'm saying the blueprint was there essentially for his career, and at least we know he's got an interest. And then we pair that with the fact that he is a genuine freak of nature who's had a long time out of not doing MMA at this point, and he would have been doing a lot of striking, especially with his bad knees. There isn't much more he could have been doing than boxing. So he would have been doing a lot of boxing-centric things for many years now. So again, not saying it's going to close the gap, but I'm just saying it does paint a more interesting narrative because this is heavyweight boxing and they will clinch. And Francis is going to throw at some point some very unorthodox, very untechnical, wild shit at some point. That's going to happen. He's going to look more refined than he has before, for sure. His striking is definitely going to be more polished than we've ever seen it, 100% certain. But there are going to be exchanges where that inner MMA gloves, just wild, reckless abandon throwing at Tyson Fury is going to come out. And it doesn't matter who you are. If you slip when you should have ducked and ducked when you should have dived and wrench at your head when you shouldn't have had one, the 5 Ds of dodgeball, then it's a very, very short night when in there with Francis Ngannou, sorry. So, of course you have the one punch, that's all it takes, but we don't actually see that in boxing a lot. It doesn't happen lot in boxing, really. It's an easy narrative to paint, but I think Teddy Atlas says it. You don't always see that. It's not actually as frequent as you think, really. There's a lot of skill before it even gets to that stage. So yeah, I think it's quite an interesting fight. I'm excited to see it.
I think, to be honest, for me, the negative view of it it's more so on the Fury end. I think I'm very happy for Ngannou. I think he's finally getting paid what he deserves. And whilst I might have criticisms about how maybe he markets himself and how he could probably do better in selling fights, maybe on the mic per se, in the cage, I think he does all he needs to do. He knocks people out, and to me, that's enough inside the cage. And so either way, I'm happy for him. I think he deserves that payday. He was getting paid a criminal amount of money in the UFC, so he's getting what he deserves. So, and for Ngannou, he's got nothing to lose. So there is a point there. He can go in there. No one has any expectations of him to win, so that gives him a huge opportunity. So for him, it's all positives. It's just on the Fury end. I think that it's just dampening the legitimacy of boxing as a sport, which we've seen over time. I think again, and it's the same premise with the YouTube stuff. I'm not gonna sit here like one of all those old guys complaining, oh, this is the end of boxing. But like there is a valid point there in the sense that when you put it in comparison to MMA, you can see the trajectories that they're both on. You know, one sport's requiring something completely outlandish and unorthodox to sort of come and pick the sport back up and give it more eyes.
Well, if a boxing fan is sitting listening to this, they're going crazy at the screen at the moment because you've got Spence Crawford coming at the end of the month.
Yeah,
which,
I know. I'm not saying
is a little bit late, but there are some big fights being made in boxing at the moment.
But I know, and that's a rarity, though, isn't it?
View, right?
And that's still a rarity.
100%.
Yeah, I'm not.
It's the most infuriating sport ever.
Exactly. That's why I don't watch it as much, because it's frustrating and it's all politics. And there are good fights that get made, but half the time when they do get made, it's never when they should have been. You know,
it's true. And the last thing I'll say on it is when you have a look at what Francis Ngannou has done in terms of building himself to a point where he could just get to France, where he's literally crossing the channels with his hands and climbing over barbed wire. It's absolutely insane that he even made it to Paris, let alone to go on the career and the trials and tribulations that have come along with that. If we think back to when he was in the UFC and he's getting letters of his resignation as he's walking out to a title fight with Cyril Gane, the biggest fight of his career, and he's got no legs. And the things that he's had to overcome in this journey, and then to go independently against one of the biggest machines and organizations we've ever seen in combat sports in the UFC, and to ultimately win. We have to remember, a lot of people counted him out to go and get this payday and fumbled the bag this and fumbled the bag that. He went away. He went into his own world of what he wanted to do. He was drafting contracts left, right, and centre, leveraged himself, outpriced himself. Everyone said everything under the sun. And then all of a sudden, he goes on Ariel Helwani, draws out a crazy response from the UFC. They make Jones and Miocic, which we're coming on to. And then next thing you know, a week later, he gets to announce the fight himself. UFC,
and he's still got PFL.
And he's still got PFL.
Yeah.
UFC's got no ammunition on a big release. He's got the $30 million fight. He's also got his PFL deal. And Francis Ngannou is sitting at the top of the tree, which he has leveraged himself to. And to be honest, we've never seen a crazier journey politically and in terms of their career as we've seen with Francis Ngannou. And he is a shining example to absolutely any fighter out there from anywhere in the world that quite literally anything is possible in this game because he's leveraged himself to be one of the biggest stars,
and
if not the biggest star, and he deserves it. So let's go into the Jones Miocic thing quickly. Let me just get your thoughts off the top. Again, we'll just we'll gloss over this and then
it's just a weird one. I mean, I know when we talk so much about age being a factor, and we know heavyweights, it's not as big of a deal. You can rely on your power, but it's a weird one. Miocic isn't a guy as much as he can hit hard because he is a heavyweight at the end of the day, and he has knocked guys out. He's not known for his power as much as some of the other heavyweights, I don't think. So that's an interesting matchup there that he can't really rely. I don't think he can rely on it as much against a guy like Jones.
I guess.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm saying it's quite interesting because you're going to get, in a way, I guess that leans it more to Jones's favor purely because if neither guy is going to get knocked out, who's going to be the more technical? Who's got the better range of abilities? I don't think it's not a hard question to answer. It's Jon Jones. His record speaks for that. But obviously, I was frustrated when he fought Gane. As impressive as the performance was, it was like we didn't get to see enough of his tools and his abilities because it was over so quickly. It was this big. We waited so long. He was teasing moving up to heavyweight for years, and then he finally did it. Made it look like a joke, but we didn't get to highlight any of his weaknesses, which I'm still convinced they're there. He did look slow. He may have got the submission so quickly, but he did look slow on the feet, and that's going to happen when you put on all that weight. So over a longer period of time, over 25 minutes, we might really see some weaknesses, some flaws come in there where he has to. Which I'm sure he's learning to adjust to, and fix up and improve on because at the end of the day, he's Jon Jones. Many argue he's the best ever. Obviously take the steroid stuff out of the equation. Some people might disagree and all, but a lot of people think he's the best. So you're gonna expect a guy like that to fix those holes and improve. I've been leaning towards picking Jones, but I think a lot of people are writing off Stipe when they shouldn't. He's the heavyweight GOAT. I think people forget that he is that guy, and I actually hope he sort of puts his foot down and sets a reminder to everyone that I'm still here, and being Jon Jones is probably about a big of a statement you can make in doing that.
It would be Stipe, wouldn't it? It would be Stipe to come out of the fire station from 2 years after running into burning buildings and chilling with the boys in the station to come out and beat the greatest heavyweight of all time after not hearing a single word in the media from him from the last 2 years. It would be Stipe Miocic to come in at 40 years age, dad bod, full to the max. And when I say dad bod, I mean he's just got that dad strength. That just
absolutely
strength. He gets those grips and he's strong. He's got nice boxing. He's very fundamentally short and fundamentally safe, and he's actually a really refreshing throwback to watch at times because he does all the basics very well to a very high level. He grapples well. He boxes well. He throws nice jabs, 1-2s. He closes range. He does everything nice and how it should be done. And then on the other hand, you have one of the greatest technicians of all time, who's obviously going to pose problems to Stipe. But if we think about it, the trilogy with DC, I mean, in terms of problematic styles and difficulties you're going to have to face, the same way that you're going to face Jones, it's the same with DC realistically, because he's got that wrestling, which is the trump card, which obviously Jones has as well. And then DC obviously didn't have the same striking, but he had very good boxing himself. And Jones has obviously got a very different style in terms of he's going to want to be probably further out of range and poke and prod at you from distance, which DC obviously couldn't do. But yeah, just initially on the matchup, it is fun. It doesn't excite me. It should excite me. It doesn't. The greatest of all time against the greatest of all time. It just doesn't excite me. There's no spark.
It's quite weird.
Yeah, it does nothing for me.
It should light fireworks, but it just doesn't.
And the truth is, the only fight that would have done that for me right now for Jon Jones would have been Francis Ngannou.
Yep,
it's not Pavlovich, to be perfectly honest. I know people are clamouring for that.
It is
not Pavlovich. I'm not even excited for that fight.
Really?
I think Tom Aspinall beats him. I do genuinely believe that.
I completely agree.
But I'm even not clambering again to see that fight now because Jon Jones isn't even going to take those fights, so I'm not even going to entertain it because there is no point in having that conversation, because I know for a fact that this Stipe fight, if he is to win, he's going to then retire.
Yeah, it's probably his last.
That is something I'll finish on. It is a crazy amount of pressure that Jon Jones has put on himself his entire career, but especially none more so than his retirement fight, because for someone like Jones, if you're going to come out and optionally say you're going to retire, it's going to put that immense amount of pressure onto the next fight because he's never actually done that before. Then you put that onto someone like Stipe Miocic. This is going to be his last fight ever. And people have very, very short memories. So whatever happens in this last fight is going to be people's lasting memories of Jon Jones, the
You really
greatest,
think so?
arguably, of all time. For a lot of people, for sure. I'm not saying it's going to taint his entire legacy. Definitely not.
Yeah,
There's like 2 decades of work. But if he
Yeah,
comes out
exactly.
and gets wrestled, I mean, just actually, we've never seen that before. He gets dominated in the grappling exchanges. He doesn't carry the weight as well. And Stipe's going to come in hitting hard in that 4th round and a nice little pep in his step, taking 0
Those
damage
liver
for the last
shots,
2 years. Yeah, just going heavy to the body. And the weight's feeling a little bit heavier than it ever has done before. And if we watch Jones's first 10 seconds against Cyril, he's a little
Very
bit sloppy
weird.
on the feet.
Yeah.
He's a little bit overextending. You do that against someone like Stipe, he's going to throw an uppercut in the clinch or go to the body and really make you pay. So if that comes out and that happens, there's going to be a lot of fans, which, I mean, ultimately, do we even need to pay attention or care what they say at this point anyway? But there's going to be a lot of people who do discredit a lot of his work off the back of that because they're going to paint the narrative of, Cyril, this is it. I already foresee. Cyril can't grapple. He lost to...
Here we go. Yeah, moving the goalposts.
To Reyes. He lost to Santos. He should have lost to anyone that wasn't Cyril Gane because he was the only person that couldn't grapple and it was a stylistic matchup.
I do think he did lose to Reyes, but that is a different conversation.
But this is exactly my point, and this is how the ball starts turning, right?
Yeah,
so it is a big
fight
wrong. For Jon Jones. But anyway, let's skip past all that because we've got UFC London to tuck into. So I don't know how you want to do this. If you want to come off the bat with a couple of fights that just get you excited,
run some fights in there.
Yeah, just shout something out that gets you excited or someone that you're looking forward to.
It's not the biggest fight there, but I am excited to see Mark Diakise back. That's a fun little fight because I think I'm not alone in the opinion that he's always been that guy that just. I'm trying to think of a good comparison here, but he's always had technically some of the best tools in the game, just putting it all together. A lot of times coasting in the ends of fights where maybe he shouldn't have, losing close decisions. It's almost like, yeah, he couldn't put the tools together and really put on a run because he's one of the most talented guys in the sport. And he really should be higher than he is. And that's not, and I don't mean to discredit him in that way because that's what I'm saying. I really think he's very talented. I just want to see him put them all together and put all the weapons he has together because on the feet he's brilliant in particular. So I just love to see him take another step forward in his career here. I think he has, I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to win a belt or anything like that. I wouldn't say that about most fighters because it's just a bold claim to make. But I it's good to see him back, and I can't remember who he fought in his last fight. But it was, I just. Yeah, I mean, it's Mark Diakise. He's always going to be an exciting fight, generally speaking. I just thought I'd throw that one in there, and I don't know too much about his opponent particularly, but it is interesting that he is. I'm looking. He is Spanish. We don't have a lot of them.
The Spanish grappling world, and obviously, fortunately enough, I've been lucky to spend some time with Mark Diakise down the gym. So I've done a bunch of filming, just cutting up some edits now, which actually have him in. So I've watched a lot of training footage from him, and you're right.
You're going to be much more informed on me.
In terms of skill set, not necessarily, but just in terms of what you touched upon in skill set, you're right, because his striking is some of the most diverse and impressive that you're going to see in the lightweight division. And if we only look back to who many had considered at one point as the best striker in the UFC in Rafael Fiziev, he had a very close striking match with him and a very close matchup. We know obviously the lean back kicks and whatnot, but it was actually a very close fight. And then you have a look at what he's doing with his grappling and his wrestling. And when I see him wrestle people in the gym, it's freakish how big and strong a lightweight supposedly is. I mean, I'm 6'2", I'm not massively skinny, but I go in there and I just see Mark Diakise and he's a powerhouse.
How tall is he?
About 5'10", 11, maybe. Fairly tall. He's fairly tall, but he's just built solid. There's not an ounce of fat on him. And when he gets his hands locked in his grappling exchanges, I just don't think there's going to be many people in the world that are going to be able to break his hands and just get easily free because he's so strong and so sticky. And I've seen him go up there with middleweights even and light heavyweights when they're off season and still dominate them on the ground in terms of wrestling exchanges. So yeah, he's very exciting. And Joe
I
Alvarez.
will say we need to dispel the myth that English fighters can't wrestle. It's not true anymore.
I had this conversation. It's funny you say this. I had this conversation with Ash Grimshaw. I had this conversation with Ash Grimshaw this week. Exceptional high-level grappling coach at Great Britain top team. And he said to me, people have to accept in England that they're not going to be able to wrestle. Or they're not going to be able to wrestle to the level of the Dagestanis or the Americans who grow up and the first thing they do is put on a singlet and they wrestle for 20 years of their life. However, what we have got very good at doing in the UK especially is defensively, our grappling's been very good. We're pairing that with very good cage work now. You see a lot of guys on the UK British scene, they've got very, very good wall wrestling and defense against the cage. And that's really where you're starting to see people plug the gap in the grappling world in terms of these countries that have a massive advantage. So it just made me think of that when you brought it up. But yeah, Mark Diak's the exciting one. Who's someone else that jumps off at the page of you?
I mean,
we've got a lot of names.
We've definitely touched on him before, but it has to be Davy Grant, man. Or every time he fights, he's my main event.
Davy Grant,
my
legend.
guy. When I went to 286, I was my mate injured. He got injured just a couple of weeks before, so I had to wheel him around in a wheelchair. Ended up being quite good. yeah. And we ended up just, while we were just trying to get to our seats, just ended up walking past Davy Grant and his family, and I sort of did a double take because he literally fought the week before with that incredible inverted triangle. Like, was it a Sun Sao? I believe it was.
Yeah, a Sun Sao. Spinning back fist to inverted triangle. One of the craziest finishing sequences I've ever seen.
No one talks about it, and that just summarizes Davy Grant. He's probably, I genuinely put him in probably the top 10 most exciting guys to watch in the sport, and no one talks about him.
You couldn't argue that.
Exactly, and I don't understand it. He deserves all the hype, and he doesn't get it because he just comes there to knock your head off every time, and he's fought some good guys, you know, and it's who did he beat? Louis Smolka, I believe he beat. No, maybe I'm wrong there. I don't want to get it wrong. I should probably look this up, but did he fight?
I remember Sun Sao was the last
fight. Did he fight Adrian Yanez? I could be wrong.
Yeah, he did. Close decision loss to Adrian Yanez. I thought he actually won that.
Yeah. But yeah, he just always comes to bang, and I'm always going to tune into his fights. And I'm the guy he's fighting is undefeated, so that could
Who's
be
he fighting again?
Problem. Daniel Marcos from Peru. I'm not. He had one fight in the UFC. I don't know too much about him. We are casuals at the end of the day.
Pretty sure he's off of Dana White's Contender Series. If you actually,
so I mean, I'm going to pick Davy Grant purely on a just pure bias because I don't care, because I love Davy Grant and I think he's a legend.
Daniel Marcos, he's off Dana White's Contender Series, I'm pretty sure, and also repping the same hair as Mark Diakese, which is interesting.
Go with the red.
But Davy Grant, if you're coming there, you're 1-0 in the UFC, 2-0 in the UFC, and you're a bantamweight, and you turn up, you knock on the door of the UFC on Tuesday morning after they've had a little conversation in the war room, and you go, "Hello, Sean Shelby, I'm 2-0 in the UFC. I'd like my new opponent, please." And they go, "Okay, here's Davy Grant in London."
Run away.
You think that is a horrible matchup because Davy Grant is one of the most excited and talented bantamweights in the world, documented, and we've seen that so many times. He has so many interesting attacks that he will throw, and he will push the pace the entirety of the fight. Again, documented. We've seen him have very close decisions, obviously with Adrian Yanez. We know how good he is. We know how close that fight even was with Cheeto. Then you look at the Sun Sao finish where he was losing a lot of the fight, and he can create moments of magic from any point in the fight. He has a nasty left hook that he throws from space, and you will see that land. There is no two ways about it. You'll see the left hook land, you'll see the stabbing kicks and the teeps to the midsection, and I think anyone that's going in there that doesn't have a good level of experience in the UFC, like an Sun Sao, you're going to struggle against Davy Grant. And if you're coming in as an unranked opponent, it's going to be a tough night for you no matter who you are, even if you are ranked. So I'm
I
always
think it's a
backing the boy
crime he's
Davy
not on the
Grant.
main card.
And
Yeah,
it's funny you say you saw him at UFC London because I actually bumped into him at Cage Warriors
Oh, did
the
you?
night before UFC London and
Yeah.
spent 5-10 minutes just
Oh, did you? I
chatting.
didn't want to bother him
And
because he's with his family.
yeah,
I wasn't actually sure it was him because he just looks like the most
he was fighting the
normal
next
guy.
day. I'm pretty sure. I can't even remember, but I'm pretty sure he was fighting the next day. And I saw him in Cage
He's just the
Warriors
most
and had a
normal
little
looking
photo.
guy. Yeah, I didn't actually realize it
Lovely
was him because
bloke.
he was just with his wife and his kids. I was with my mate. I was like, I swear that's Davy Grant, you know.
Yeah,
And then
lovely
when
bloke.
Edwards beat Usman, and then they went pan to the fighters, the cam, and I saw Davy Grant celebrating in the car. I was like, that was Davy Grant. I did walk past Davy Grant.
He's a straight he's a straight fan.
Dude.
Yeah, he's a straight fan.
Man.
One fight that we need to definitely touch on is Chris Duncan, Yanal Ashmove, because Chris Duncan obviously coming from the Dana White's Contender Series, and that boy can crack. He's gone out to America, obviously now gone out to a big team, getting some high level sparring in, and this is the clash of the Titans essentially because we've seen what Yanal can do, documented in UFC London last time out. He's a heavy hitter. Again, a lot to prove in the UFC.
Oh, it's
got
him,
a whole
isn't
country
it?
behind
Oh my
him.
god, yes, that's
and
right.
we've got two absolute dynamite explosive hitters in this fight, and I'm pretty excited by it because I want to see the refinements Chris Duncan has made to his game because I know he's got that good grappling there.
Yeah, he relied a lot on his wrestling.
Sticky wrestling, and I want to see that paired with his hands more, which I know that he's going to have been working on with a very high level team and sparring partners out there in America. So I'm quite excited for this. I will say,
when I obviously because I saw both of them live as well. Duncan impressed me with his wrestling, but again, I'd like to see those improvements on the feet. I think he could have engaged in the striking a little bit more. He did what he needed to do to win, and he deserved that last time. Ashmoose is a very I didn't register who it was from it, and then I remembered that knockout of Patterson. That just completely silenced the 0-2. It was a brutal one. He looked very good, very good. Again, the problem is when you got a guy who's first fight in the UFC, I believe it was his debut, and to win in such a short amount of time, it doesn't give you a good indicator on where their skills lie as much.
It's true.
But I'm gonna lean towards him because he did look at Ashmoose actually as much as we want to back the Brits here, but I'm gonna go with Ashmoose because he looked dangerous, and I think he could catch Duncan pretty early. I can definitely see that happening.
And he has been cracked a few times early. That is, we have seen that. But I don't know. I've just got this feeling that seeing the work that Chris Duncan's been getting in, seeing the people he's been training with, I just think we're going to see a much more refined version of his game because that boy works really hard. And I've just got this weird feeling, but
it's a good fight. But I would say either option is
explosive as hell. Obviously, just to shout out a couple of other fights that we've got on that undercard, which are pretty exciting. We've got Muradov Barberena. Having Brian Barberena on the UFC London undercard, that's a pretty fight. That's a pretty fun addition. He's actually a legend, Brian Barberena.
He's taking trips to London every 6 months,
and he's
been on the last. He was at 286, and I think he was. I want to say the one before that.
He's perfect though for UFC Londons and pay-per-views because he always brings it. He's got an incredible resume. You know what you're gonna get. Someone might be able to build a name off him. Someone might be able to have a good scrap with him. You know what you're going to get with Brian Barberena.
There's no shame in losing to Gunnar Nelson. That was
no exactly,
shame
especially in the first round submission. I mean, we've all been there. Just touching on Mark Diakiese's opponent quickly, just because I'm having a look. But Joe Alvarez is very skilled. If you go back, he's only lost, I believe, in a very long time, and also only lost in the UFC was to Arman Sarukian, who managed to cut him open quite aggressively. But you have a look at Joel Alvarez, and he's got a very good submission game. Very good submission game. 6'3", so he's very, very tall. Really nice guillotines, as you would expect with someone with that sort of frame. And I've spoke to Mark Diakiese before, even when he fought Dan Hooker, and he said he was just so surprised about how tall he was, how rangy he was, and how he managed to lock up that submission because his limbs were just so long. And you're gonna have similar problems from someone like Joe Alvarez just because he does have such long limbs. So I think if Mark Diakiese can stay safe in those grappling exchanges, if he does take it to the ground, because he will feel confident there despite the submission threat, just because he is so aggressive and strong and dominant there. But yeah, that's not an easy fight. And I think he's got 16 submissions on his record if you actually have a look at Yo Alvarez. And I believe something like all 16 of them are guillotines. Something insane along those lines.
Okay.
So yeah, he's a dangerous person. Danny Roberts, obviously we got, always fun to watch Hot Chocolate. Again, shout out to
I do remember him getting, I believe it was him who lost to Michel Pereira. And Jack Della Maddalena as well. Because
fighting good guys, you know.
Good guys, yeah, exactly, absolutely. I just thought I'd just pick that one out because I do remember when I was making my video on Michelle, that was his debut. I believe
Shauna Bannon as well was making her debut. Yeah. Who else we got? We've also got
Lerone Murphy. This is
the main card. Yeah, so take me for a few fights.
I want to see big improvements from him because I think Gabriel Santos he fought at 286 and I think he lost that fight as much as I like Lerone. It was a close fight, but I think he pretty clearly lost it, but they gave him the decision. Fair enough, it's going to go your way sometimes. Take that, but you know, in the ideal mindset for him, I think he should take that and regardless of whatever it says, a win or a loss, see where he needs to improve and accept the fact that he wasn't at his best or that he could be better because he's such a talented guy. So technical, so quick, just in every aspect of the game. I'd like to see improvements to be made there, and I think if he can make a statement here, put himself back on that track, and start stringing some more wins together, because I think he can definitely crack that top 15. Same with Nathaniel Wood. You know, I know they were meant to fight each other, which is a shame. I think that would have been a great fight.
I want to see that.
It's a shame that didn't happen. It was actually interesting. I remember when that fight got announced, I was mad about it because we don't want to see English guys fighting each other, really.
Talent pool's too big now. It's going to happen eventually from time to time.
But I remember there was a lot of respect and sportsmanship. They were talking about getting a pint afterwards, and then in the build-up, out of nowhere, it was like the switch just completely flipped, and they were exchanging some pretty fiery words. From what I remember,
enjoyed the saga. Guilty.
Yeah,
I was just sat in the middle enjoying it.
No,
yeah, it's fun.
I thought, yeah, why not? It's just a shame we didn't get that. So hopefully in the future,
I think it's fun. Just makes the fight more interesting, to be honest. I imagine after the fight, they would have shaken hands and there would have been absolutely no beef and there would have been nothing but respect. And I think we all know that at the end of the day. But I think in the build up to it, it's a bit of fun. Go wrong. Talk some shit, put out some memes. I think it's pretty funny, to be honest. Let's build a fight. Yeah. I mean, we are in the entertainment business. You know what I mean? I think some people have to realise that sometimes. I don't mean go out and just be inauthentic and just chat shit and try and be the worst person in the world. But, I mean, if you've got a few things to say, you may as well get on Twitter and just have a bit of fun with it. You haven't got to be... You know what I mean?
Remember,
let's make it a little bit more interesting.
I do remember Nathaniel was posting some Photoshop stuff on his Instagram. I think, from what I remember, it was
no, he did. But they were going back and forth. I enjoyed it both sides. Exactly. I think it was fun. Yeah, I think it was fun. I'd like to see more of it, to be honest.
But I'm picking to win. Kulabau's decent guy. Good to see again. I was going to say,
Josh Kulabau is a very tough matchup. A very tough matchup. And he's very much overlooked every time he comes into fights because he doesn't look athletic. He doesn't look intimidating. He doesn't look physically imposing. But he's very well-rounded, he's very well-skilled, and he's going to push a very high pace. And we've seen Lerone at times be a little bit uncomfortable when that pace has been quite high and he's not been able to dictate on his own terms. So it's going to be fascinating and interesting to see if he can come out and take centre and if he can command the space and get his offence going and start taking over that way, because Josh Kulabau was very relentless and he's come all the way from Australia and he's not going to look to go back there with a loss. And he's going to push a high pace and he's going to make this very uncomfortable. And he's very, very skilled. And we look at featherweight in terms of just skill sets and whatnot. And he's coming out of Dana White's Contender Series, but he's very, very good. And he beat Melsik Bagdasarian, I believe, who actually got an impressive win last night, whose striking is very, very good. He's a very high-level credentialed kickboxer. And we saw Josh Kulabau finish him in 2. So this is an interesting fight, actually, and a very difficult fight. And for those that don't know Josh Kulabau, may just see he's got a decent record, but he's not got many fights in the UFC. But this guy is very, very skilled. And in terms of non-ranked featherweight opponents, he's sort of as good as you're going to get, really. So it's an interesting one. Jai Herbert Faraz Saheem is a very fun matchup, actually, to be honest. Once again, Jai Herbert gets no favours with the matchmaking.
He really doesn't, man. He really doesn't.
He gets no...
It's a shame. Sorry, go.
No, go on.
Okay, I mean, I was going to say it's more... Same kind of premise when I talk about Mark. It's like his tools are so good. But we know that, and it's just about putting them together. I think you look how good he is on the feet. I mean, he's the only guy to put Topuria in trouble. Like, that's wild to think about. He was this close to finishing him, and sure, Topuria absolutely sent him into the ninth realm. But that first round, my my betting parlay was shitting itself for about 20 seconds after that head kick landed. And to credit to Topuria for recovering there, but it's a testament to how good Jai is. He's really, really, really talented. And on the feet, I think he beats a lot of guys. He should just be a kickboxer, I reckon.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, and it was. I think he didn't deserve. I think there's a little bit of just lack of fight IQ, getting that point deduction in his last fight. I think that's what ended up with a draw. I think he did deserve the win, but you can't make those little mistakes like that, or you're gonna get given the wrong end of the stick. If you slip up like that, get a point deduction. You're asking to get thrown the other way, aren't you? So
I think when you have a look at Jai Herbert, we have to even take into consideration, up until a couple of fights ago, he was still working as a scaffolder. He's only just recently been able to quit his job and train full time. And when you're training full time down at a gym like Renegade, and I've been fortunate enough to go down there and see the high level coaching that they have there and in the surrounding areas with Canby Wrestling and Fearless and MMA and whatnot, you see the high level training partners and coaches that they have doing 2-a-days and training like a professional athlete is just going to exponentially increase your skill level, which I think that we're going to see, because Varas Siam, although I've butchered his name, he is a very good fighter, but we aren't typically accustomed to him being a very good wrestler or grappler or being able to get it to the floor. And I think if he's not able to do that and dominate and dictate in that realm, if it stays standing with Jai Herbert, I think Jai Herbert's going to be too much, as you said, for a lot of people. He's got a very sort of funky style, actually, where he throws orthodox stuff, but he throws it on a weird tempo. And I've heard Ilia Topuria even just this week speak about how that left high kick came from nowhere.
What did he say about that?
He just said he actually was quite dismissive of it, and I think that
he's playing out to it.
He really is with everything. I mean, maybe one day he's going to knock everyone out, and we're going to be like, yeah, he actually called it this. I don't know, but he was very dismissive of it. But when you have a look at Jai Herbert's kickboxing, very slick, and it's just a little bit funky. It's just a little bit offbeat.
Yeah, he's always bobbing, just a little bit. Yeah,
and you never know when it's gonna quite come on the attack, and that's exactly what got the high kick up there. So even though that Vares Siam. I keep butchering his name. Very good kickboxer. Just think when you look at him in there, he's not very imposing. He's not particularly hard hitting, and he's not going to be a really strong grappling threat to someone like Jai Herbert, who gets a lot of good looks and who gets a lot of good wrestling in Birmingham. So I think that Jai's going to be able to have his way with him in there. We've seen Siam make some good adjustments in his UFC career because he needed to. He just kept getting in close fights. But I think Jai Herbert's skill level is just that much higher. I think he's going to be able to keep it standing. And when he does, I think he's going to be able to take over on the feet and possibly get a second round TKO head kick.
Good shout, yeah. You know what? I'll run with that too. Why not?
Big one.
I will say, seems to me that losing to Paul Craig is the best base for winning a championship in the middleweight division. So, Muniz, if you want to lose on Saturday, go. You want to lose to Paul Craig, and then you go and win the title.
Just didn't even see this one on the card. I completely forgot about this fight.
I mean, a Paul Craig matchup's always going to be fun because he's either gonna get a submission or he's gonna get knocked out, and there's no in between. So yeah, I love watching Paul Craig just because jiu-jitsu. He's one of the best grapplers in the game. Really, he's so talented on the mat. But that in a way is a bit of a double-edged sword because that is his game plan every time. And I feel like until it isn't, he's always going to get caught, and he's never going to reach the upper echelons of the division. He's come close a few times, strung a few wins together. He got that triangle over Krylov and the triangle armbar over Jamal. But he just doesn't have on the feet. He's got too many. He's got a lot of things he needs to fix, if you know what I'm saying. And I think again, if he is able to repair that, cut away those weaknesses, we could see him make a title charge. But he's getting too predictable. People are just willing to. Who was it he fought? Was it the Georgian? It was Georgian. He was was he Delidze? He fought Delidze, didn't he? Am I wrong there? I'm pretty sure he fought. No, was it? Who was it he fought?
Who?
I'm getting exposed here. Paul
Muniz.
Craig. No, Paul Craig. Was it Delite who fought? Who did he
He
fight?
fought a lot like heavyweight.
Ozdemir.
Yeah,
Sorry,
at
not
UFC
Delite.
London. He had that weird
Yes.
fight with Ozdemir
Yeah.
at UFC
And
London.
Ozdemir wanted no part of the ground game, and because he knew, he studied the tape, it was obvious what Craig was going to do.
You don't need
Craig
to
was willing
study
to
the
sit on his
tape.
back. Yeah, exactly. At this point, you don't even need to.
You don't need to study the tape.
And Ozdemir had great success there, just by just completely not playing his game whatsoever. And Krylov made that mistake, and so did Jamal. And obviously they got caught. And if you play into Craig's game, that's his realm. You are going to lose. But he's too one-faceted for me.
I think there's a lot of things I think of when I think of Paul Craig. First and foremost, I always said that he should be in the middleweight division. I don't think he had the size to compete with those guys at 205, and I don't think his style was indicative of being super successful at 205 either. So I think the drop was important. When he went down, I automatically looked at the rankings and said, Andre Muniz will be the perfect matchup. He got that in London. Perfect. Now what we have is an interesting matchup because Andre Muniz is going to have a large part of his ego telling him that he's going to have better jiu-jitsu than Paul Craig. So potentially he's going to entertain the grappling exchanges of Paul Craig because Andre Muniz, let's not forget, is one of the fiercest submission artists in the middleweight division. And up until his recent loss against Brendan Allen, who was always going to be difficult for him, a lot of people were talking him to go and compete against Israel Adesanya. And when I look at Paul Craig with his striking and hearing him talking in interviews and seeing his training footage, there's a couple of things I think. First and foremost, I think there's a confidence thing with his striking. I think he's someone that does a lot of good stuff in the training room, does a lot of good stuff with his coaches, does a lot of good stuff on the pads. He just hasn't developed that full confidence yet to go out and express himself in his striking. And I think when we start to see that more, we're going to start to see Paul Craig a full evolution. Now he's down in weight class. He's looking strong.
Yeah, that is what I'm interested in.
He's looking super, super lean. And I think if we can see Paul where he can start using his striking to get into his grappling exchanges, like we see someone like an Aljamain Sterling, I think is a very good example, actually. I think they've got similar styles, even though on a completely different end of the spectrum. They both want to be in tight. They both want to get to your back or find you in submissions with your arms and your legs, and you're in triangles and arm bars and things of that nature. Body locks. I think that using a striking game similar to Aljamain Sterling, where you have those sort of bit more wilder kicks and you use those looping shots to get in on the leg and get in close and get body locks and work your way up the back and get people to the cage, I think then we're going to start seeing a different Paul Craig. And I'm quite excited because I've seen him in interviews recognise all of these spots that he needs to improve.
That's good.
And I'm excited to see what version we get of him because I think that we could have something really exciting where we say, oh, hold up a second, he's putting it together. And Andre Muniz is the perfect test. And I think we're going to see a fun fight.
Point. Yeah, I think moving down to, I almost forgot that he was moving down a weight division because I remember when he said he was going to do that. That is a really interesting. It's a prospect that it's exciting because at the end of the day, it's a completely different dynamic. When you cut that weight, you're a lot looser. You're a lot faster. You're not holding as much baggage, if you know what I mean.
Probably so stronger as well, realistically.
You think so?
I think so. I think just looking at him, I reckon he's probably stronger. And I would be very surprised if he doesn't come out, if he gets a big win, post-fight win, sits in a press conference and says, this is the strongest or best I've ever felt. Because just seeing a video of him the other day, the shape that he was in, he probably had to do so much more strength and conditioning possibly than he was doing before, and more in terms of energy output, that I probably believe that his conditioning and his strength is probably at an all-time high, just looking at him, because he never came in big for 205. You're coming in there against...
Has he fought a middleweight before? Or no?
No, I don't think so. You're coming in against people like, if you look at the top of the division, the Johnny Walkers and Anthony Smiths and Jamal Hills, these are 6'4", 220, 230, huge blokes. And although Paul Craig's fairly tall, he's got a swimmer's frame. He's got a frame like
a good way of putting it, yeah.
Michael Phelps, old Paul Craig. He really does. He's got the broad shoulders and the narrow waist. And I just think his shape was very much for middleweight. So I'm excited to see him there. But obviously we've got the biggest fight on the card, probably for me personally. What do you think about this one?
You going what? Which one? You going Nathaniel Wood here versus Feely or
Nathaniel Wood, Andre Fili.
yeah. I think. I mean, obviously, you know the ins and outs of how well he's doing. Because, I mean, I don't need to tell you that. I've always appreciated how good Nathaniel's been and the improvements he's made over such a short period of time. He's so that fight against Charles Jourdain was so impressive, and we know how impressive Jourdain is. He's knocking a lot of people out, and Wood made completely outclassed him on the feet. He's got that great featherweight frame, similar to that of Volkanovski. Do you know what I'm saying? Small, but he's mobile, so fast, darting in and out. So much quicker than everyone else. And I love the way he just fires off those leg kicks as well. He's just in and out all the time, so quick, and he's just able to chip away, and then suddenly it's been 3 rounds and you're done and it's over. And Nathaniel's getting his hand raised. It's like, I think we're going to see that. That's just what we're going to see. I don't think. He's also how impressive he is on the mat as well. I don't think we're going to see a knockout. That's just not really, just judging off his resume. I don't think Nathaniel's that kind of guy to get those knockout finishes. He has in the past, back in his Cage Warrior days. But I think we're going to see an absolute clinic here, because I think he's going from strength to strength, and he's still trying to find his groove in the division. I think he's found it hard to really find a string of wins to put together. And I think Wood's got all the momentum here. I think it's going to be a blowout over 15 minutes. Yeah.
I said to him before, his low kicking display against Rosa was one of the best calf kicking displays we've seen in a very, very long time. And you'd have to put it up there top 5 with ever, because you look at the execution and the damage and how effective they were. I have no idea how that fight didn't get stopped, or he broke his leg at some point. And he's broken multiple people's legs before, Nathaniel Wood. He kicks like a mule. And that's one thing I think he does so well, which sets up the rest of his game, is his calf kick game is so nasty that it sets up his boxing so beautifully. He's been doing very good and close work with Barry, the boxing coach down at GB Top Team. And he's really implemented what seems like a similar style to that of the boys at City Kickboxing, where it's a very lead hand dominant game. You're going to get a lot of feints, a lot of different looks, a lot of level changes, a lot of pouring, a lot of scraping away. A lot of Nathaniel's game is dictated off that front hand, and it's so nice to watch, because not only does he change the levels with it, so he goes to the body, or he comes at a more of an acute angle, a bit more like an uppercut with the jab, and it's just snapping your head back, but he also varies the power with it. So he'll touch, bang, he'll land a heavier one, he'll touch. And the way that he just varies the target, but also varies the power, it really keeps his opponent guessing. And like I said, all of these different things with his feints and his different fakes and his calf kicks, it's just overloading and overfrying the brain. And all of this is just setting up his boxing. And I've never seen his hands look so sharp. And we look at featherweight, there are not going to be many, if any, featherweights that come up against Nathaniel Wood that are going to be quicker than him at the moment. They just aren't.
I think so.
He is so sharp at the moment, and
I'd argue he's quicker than Volk. I really would.
He's definitely one of the fastest strikers in the featherweight division. There's no question about it. Just watching him, seeing it firsthand, 100%.
I would say the fact that his frame, as I said, similar to Volkanovski, it sort of complements it sort of complements his style, and he's able to. He fights sort of quite low. Do you know what I'm saying?
He does.
So he's able to dart and get those takedowns. Complement that again, tied in with his speed.
It's true.
He'll get that takedown so easy because he's ready. He's always there, ready to just shoot on the single or the double, and he's there for it. And that works for me. He can hide the takedown. Again, as you say, pop the jab front with that lead hand. He's so diverse and he keeps improving all the time. I think I'm really excited to see where he goes. It's a shame we haven't really seen him fight more. Because he's actually, people forget he's actually been in the UFC quite a while, and obviously he was originally fighting at bantamweight, and now he's, now he's at featherweight. He's here, a bit more of a natural weight class. Doesn't have to worry about the weight cut too much, and his speed is still frighteningly good. So it's just like so exciting. I can't wait to see him fight. Really,
it's a really good point actually you made, because he does fight in that lower stance. That does set up a ton of things for him. Because not only is he in a nice base to really chop with the low kick, but like you said as well, it hides in the level change, but also it pops the jab from a really peculiar angle where the hands are quite low, and it comes, like I said, on a bit of a 45-degree, and it's so sharp. I've just looking back at some footage yesterday of that jab just landing, and when he lets that front hand go and that just dictates the fight, it really takes over. And when I look at this fight, as good as Andre Fili is, and I think Nathaniel's going to have to look out for things like head kicks and stuff of that nature, and as much of a veteran he is, but I think if he can establish his jab and his low kicks, what he does so well, I think he's going to be able to knock him out on the feet. Just in terms of what I've seen with his sparring, I think the left hook may do it, just on the end of a combination, exiting the pocket. I think we might see a left hook knockout. And when you talk about his stature for that division as well, it has a lot of benefits, like you said, because he does have quite long levers with his arms. And what he does very, very well is he's a mixed martial artist. He didn't come in this as a striker or a wrestler or a jiu-jitsu guy. He came in as a mixed martial artist. And you see it in him because he can go anywhere. He does have good submissions. He does have good front chokes, darces, anacondas, guillotines, rear naked. He's got very nice front choke series, which I see him get a lot. And he's got very good defensive grappling as well, in terms of he picks the right decisions, he stays safe, he gets back to his feet, he doesn't settle. So he does a lot of things well. And one thing that I also want to mention, when you look at Nathaniel Wood and what he's doing with his career, if you're an aspiring fighter, or if you're just someone that wants to train and get better at mixed martial arts, I think what Nathaniel Wood is doing with his business and as an entrepreneur is very, very impressive. And I messaged him about this before, because what he's done in terms of building an academy, and he's leveraged not only his brand and his name when he's in the spotlight the most in the sport, but he's also got his coaches involved and his nutritionists, and he's put an online platform out there so that if you're an aspiring fighter or if you're trying to pick value, then you can go to the likes of Ashley Grimshaw, Brad Pickett, the best S&C guys in the game, and you can pick all their brains of knowledge for £5 a month. And it's actually a really impressive service. And when you look at what he's doing, it puts a blueprint out there for fighters to say, look, by the way, this game does not last forever and there are no certainties. So whilst your name's in the spotlight, whilst you're competing in the UFC at the O2 London, whilst everyone's saying your name, try and leverage a business or opportunities to set you up for further down the line. And that's something that he's done with his academy, with his clothing brand, and it's something I always like talking to him about because he's done a very good job with that.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a good. I'm glad you touched on that, actually, because I noticed he put out his new clothing. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but he's got the Prospect Academy, Prospect Apparel, sorry, which is cool. And he did a video with I don't know. There's a like a FIFA YouTuber or something who's big. I don't know, he's popular, but I saw it. I just saw Nathaniel Wood, and he was doing something with a YouTuber. I was like, oh, that'd be fun. And he was like just teaching him, just basics of mixed martial arts.
I watched that,
and that's to a huge audience. So it's like he's doing all the right things, to show that there's more, not just inside the cage, but out. It's not just all talking on the microphone. There's so many opportunities which fighters don't use, and there's guys with way bigger names than Nathaniel, no offense to him, who aren't taking advantage of those opportunities. So he's doing completely all the right things.
I think for Nathaniel as well, he was very lucky. I've spoke to him about how he saw the journey of Brad Pickett before him. So he had so much to learn from and take advice from.
Yeah, wise men.
There isn't really a better man in MMA. You look at, in terms of being British, to take advice and guidance from. So he's seen it and done it all before. So even though he's still very young in the game, he's just getting into his prime, and he's just coming into the most exciting form of his life, I believe, from what I've seen. So
I agree.
I think he's going to get an emphatic win, and then I think he's going to come out and he's going to ask for a top 15 opponent. I think he deserves it
completely.
Yeah, for sure. I
think he should have already had it. I think this should be his top 15 matchup. I think he's
dominating Charles Jourdain like
man.
that.
Exactly.
You're a ranked guy in my opinion. But okay, just two to finish off, and then we've got we've got Novak Djokovic and Alcaraz to go and watch.
Yeah,
because that's a matchup
exciting.
I actually really want to watch. So we'll get onto these quickly.
Tennis podcast now.
Molly McCann, Julia Solorenko.
I will say I don't know too much about Stolyarenko, but I do know she's had some weight cut issues in the past. True. So that might be a problem. Whether this fight actually happens.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I would not be surprised if that doesn't even go ahead. I'm sure they could be,
for sure.
I think it's another classic Molly McCann fight. I love watching her fight. I think she's, in terms of excitement, I think she's a breath of fresh air in the women's divisions where it's needed. I think as much as the women's game is developing, it isn't there compared to the men's game, and that's no disrespect to them. It's just it hasn't been there as long. We're still getting fighters coming through and learning the sport from a younger age, and we're starting to see that now. But Molly McCann always brings the fun, so I'm not going to say no to a matchup. I love the way she uses her boxing. Obviously, she used to be a boxer before she transitioned to MMA. I love it. She had big success against who was it she knocked out with the elbow? She fought last week. She just won. Brazilian. I can't remember her name.
Or something along that name.
I can't remember her name.
Santos Limmy. She's got long limbs.
I know her name. I don't know why.
Remember.
It doesn't matter. But you get the point. But she had great success there when she backed her opponent against the cage and was just unloading with her hands, finding great success there. But again, it's been the same story throughout a lot of her career. Is the glaring holes in the grappling department. Obviously, I mean, she got subbed by Gillian Robertson, which is that's nothing to be ashamed of. Gillian Robertson is one of the best grapplers in the game. But again, Erin Blanchfield as well, being dominated on the mat against Erin Blanchfield. Again,
no shame.
Not something to be ashamed of. Of
no
course not. But
if
you can say no shame, but again, if you want to, I agree. But if you want to be, at the top, and you want to be at the best, you got to beat the best. So you've got to fix those holes.
The best is blessed, baby.
Best is blessed. Shout out, Max. But yeah, I'm gonna pick Molly to win there, just purely because I know she does have. I think on the feet she's better than a lot of girls in that division. It's just her grappling that needs working on. But I'm gonna pick her.
I think she's got a lot to prove as well. You've seen the interviews recently and seen how difficult a time that was, and I appreciate that because you have to remember that from Molly McCann's perspective, her career really just took off seemingly overnight. It went 0 to 100. She's been grinding for many years, and then all of a sudden she goes from working in Subway to being one of the biggest franchise stars in the UFC. And that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of media. It's a lot of eyeballs. It's a lot of attention. And it's a lot of expectation on you. So to come out and have that loss and to deal with that Erin Blanchfield loss, and it was a loss which you have to stop and look at because it was so dominant, and you're going to get that from someone that's so skilled like Erin Blanchfield. But she really went away, and she's worked very, very hard, I've seen in her camp, just paying close attention to what she's been doing. So it's safe to say she's made every preparation necessary to come out.
I wouldn't expect anything less
make
from
a big comeback. Obviously, UFC London, this is where she cuts her teeth in terms of the UFC and where she does big things. But I think it would be unfair for me to mention Nathaniel Wood's success outside of the cage and not mention Molly McCann, because once again, in terms of fighters, in terms of understanding branding, understanding opportunities and understanding leverage, a lot of fighters can take a lot of inspiration from someone like Molly McCann. And when you have a look at what she's doing outside of the cage, and not only in terms of maximizing her revenue streams, but also in terms of charitable things and time she spends in the community and giving back, and the way that she uses her platform to leverage other people's stories and other people's exposure is really, really impressive. And recently she just opened a restaurant in Liverpool called Polpetta, which translates into meatball in Italian. And she's made an Italian restaurant with a close friend, and they've put out food now where they make meatball subs and pasta dishes. That's brilliant. Some really, really nice food. And I'm super excited to go down there and film a Food Fighters episode with her.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I've spoke to her multiple times. I'm going to go up there and get that set up for sure. I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm gonna go up there. But
I'll be down to
again,
help you out with that if you wanted.
I,
Like,
I
I could
appreciate that for
in
sure.
any way. No worries.
We'll get a project sorted. That'll be fun. We'll
Yeah,
go up there
hey,
and
that would be
we'll
sick.
record that because I know that you know your way around a camera. So I'm always more than happy to get you involved if you ever wanna
Yeah,
tag
sure, why
along
not?
with things like that. But yeah, just to touch on that. Apologies. Yeah,
Sorry.
just touching on that. Yeah, with Molly McCann, what she's done in terms of using her brand and leveraging that to get the most opportunity and maximize that is really important for fighters to understand how to use the spotlight and how to use it to open different business ventures and how to get more spotlight onto different areas of your life and bring more attention and brand deals and things like this, because that fame, that notoriety, the spotlight, it doesn't last forever and you have to
Mm-hmm.
maximize it when the lights are bright. And I think Molly McCann is doing a fantastic job of doing that both personally and for others around her, which I think is really, really exceptional. And she's got
I
a lot of
will.
people in her gym as well
Sorry.
that are, no, you're good. I'll just finish on this. She's got a
Yeah,
lot of people in her gym as well who are on the come up now, and we're seeing even Luke Riley that we'll see at Cage Warriors next week. So
I will say it's refreshing that she is. You know, again, you talked about how she maximizes her revenue streams. She does that very well, and I agree. And I also say she is such a rarity in the sense that she's one of the few fighters that is so honest and open about her struggles, because it's a
true.
side of not just in MMA but in just in sport in general, competitively at the top. It's the mental game is so
That's
challenging.
all
And
of it,
people's
right?
and that's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's nothing new. Everybody knows that, but it's rare you get fighters who will openly speak about the ins and outs of those issues and those struggles in the camps, those hard nights, the sleepless ones, and the bad days in training. You know, it's everyone has them. You know, and she's so open and honest about that. I really love the way she talks about mental health. I don't know if you've seen the BT film. I don't know. Have you seen that? There was a film that
Yeah.
BT did on her just before her fight in London, where she got that the elbow KO. It was just after she beat Cachoeira, I think it was. And Oh no, it wasn't Cachoeira. It was the one after that. I think I can't remember who it was specifically. Um, but she had to win that fight, and she did that, and she put herself not just she didn't put on just a good performance inside the cage, but she had the bit of showmanship as well. Got a lot of eyes on her from that, and that sort of gave her a
Mm.
good platform to build off of, and then obviously
True.
the elbow at
True.
London completely sent her into space on the hype train, if you know what I'm saying.
And that's
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what. No, it's
very
just I was
exciting.
going to say that was a good point that you made because again, once you have the spotlight on you, is another thing to be able to deliver. And I think that Molly McCann done that
Mm.
very well because when all the chips were down and when all the pressure was on her, she needed a win to basically revive her UFC career entirely. She goes on that UFC London card, gets one of the most spectacular finishes in women's MMA ever. I think gets one of only 4 finishes like that in women's MMA. No, that was one of only 5 knockouts in that weight
Oh,
class.
mate.
And the first spinning elbow. And then she does it twice. So to
You were
maximize the
there, right,
limelight,
as well?
yeah, I was there. It
Oh,
was,
mate, the sound, wasn't it? It was
I
unbelievable.
caught it
Oh,
all
my
live on
word.
my camera. It was actually insane. I
Oh.
caught it all live. It's on my YouTube. It was absolute insanity. It
I
just
remember
erupted.
literally, I was we were just sitting there. We were like, not like right next. We weren't like cage side or anything, but we had fairly decent seats. And I just remember the sound.
Popped.
We had the perfect angle at it, level of it, and I just saw that. And as soon as that connection hit, I just went ballistic with my mates. It was, that night, man. What a great night that was. What an event to go to.
For sure, yeah. And
One of my favorites.
let's finish on someone who didn't have the best of events last time out in
Oh,
UFC London. Tom
devastating.
Aspinall. And
Oh,
obviously we've spoke about before, we won't have to
yeah.
get into how distressing it was seeing someone like Tom Aspinall, who's larger than life, 6'5", very imposing, very able, very skilled, to be
Taller than the bloody cage.
screaming on the canvas with the
Yeah.
O2 emptying by the second. So,
Terrible, man.
not great scenes, but how do you see this fight going? Give
I,
me your
I,
thoughts.
I mean, my justification of this is I think if there's ever going to be a guy that's going to recover from adversity like that, it's going to be Tom Aspinall. I mean, for the longest time, I've always penned to be just. It was always going to be a champion. Like he just is. It was never for me. It's always going to be a non-negotiable, and it was. It was after his Arlovsky fight, the way he, and
Power
that win
double.
aged beautifully. Yeah. Oh my word. Yeah. It was, and that win aged beautifully because Arlovsky went on to, even in his age, he's still beating guys
Yeah.
left, right, and center. And Tom made him look like a joke. And that's no disrespect to Arlovski. It's just Tom is that good, and he's the new blood. He's the guy, and I think he's one of the few heavyweights that can really string everything together. Because a lot of heavyweights, they don't have good grappling or elite jiu-jitsu like Tom does, because they don't need it, because they can rely on the knockout power, or their takedown defense is good enough that they don't really need to get it to the mat. Or you can just be like Derek Lewis and just like stand up and
Doesn't
ignore
work.
jiu-jitsu. Doesn't work. But Tom's one of those guys that has all the pieces of the puzzle. Again, similar to what we said about Nathaniel, he just puts everything together perfectly. He has all the ability to be a champion, and I don't think Tybura is going to slow that down. I think he's going to absolutely, completely dominate him. My only criticism, I almost wish we had a stronger matchup for him. But I get it. He's coming back from injury,
Tybura's
so
good.
they're trying to ease him. And
Tybura's
Tybura is a
good.
good fight. It's a good fight.
Yeah, Tybura's good.
But I would have loved to have seen like a Tuivasa, but he's come back too soon from 2 losses, and also getting knocked out. Doesn't he wants to take some time off, so I can understand that. Hopefully, we'll get that down the line. I really don't see anyone in that division beating Tom. I think he beats everybody there, and I've been saying that for the longest time. And it was the matchup again. It was the one against Volkov. I mean, it was effortless. That little sequence where he slips the high kick, and then slips the jab and gets the blast double. It's just beautiful. You just don't see that from a heavyweight. He moves like a welterweight.
Don't see that from a lot of fighters.
You don't see that from anybody. Yeah, exactly. It's just beautiful. Not just technique, but the fight IQ as well. He completely nullified and shut down everything that the Volkov had.
Who's again aged very well. That
elite,
win, right?
Exactly. As his one against Spivak as well. Made Spivak like completely smashed Spivak. And look at he's gone on to do. Exactly. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And so it's even more testament to how good he is and what I believe and I'm sure you'd think the same, what he's going to go on and do. For me, he's just destined for the belt. I don't see it any other way. And for me, it's going to be domination here. I'm so happy to see him back because, the injury was devastating. I was so devastated for him because really it was that win against Blades. I was convinced he was going to beat Blades. And people act like Blades was winning that. 15 seconds?
There was 10 seconds.
And people say he got caught. He didn't. I rewatched that. I'm fairly certain he didn't even get touched by Curtis. It actually looks like he does, but I rewatched it. He doesn't even get hit. They both come in and try and trade. But again, you can't. Who's judging a fight off 10, 15 seconds for injury? Ridiculous. But that's MMA fans for you. But and I think he would have beaten Blades as much as I think Blades is a great fighter. I think Tom would have had his way with him, and I think he will do the same to Tybura. I'm gonna go with a Well, I don't even. I'm thinking he's gonna get a knockout here. I'm gonna see a first round knockout. That's how I see it.
The funniest thing with Tom Aspinall and Volkov is people that were at the O2 or didn't know a ton about mixed martial arts, they would have thought that this Volkov guy, he's a lump, like he's not very good. People don't actually realize that Volkov is one of the most accomplished
strikers. I mean, everything really. He's
in the heavyweight division. You look at his credentials, there's not many more grizzled vets in the game than someone like Volkov in the heavyweight division. I think he's got over 50 pro fights. He's been the last time he was finished was like 13 years ago.
Unbelievable.
By a submission. So it sort of goes to show. But when you have a look at Tom Aspinall, we have to look at the jiu-jitsu credentials. He's old man Andy Aspinall, the first black belt in jiu-jitsu in the UK. So we're talking about a legitimate pioneer who had Tom Aspinall in the gi at 5, 6, 7 years old. And then we have a look at the family friends that are the Furies, who he acted as a training partner for Tyson Fury many times in the cage, in the ring, So we know the boxing credentials of Tom Aspinall as well. And then we have a look at the training room, because you can't look at Tom Aspinall without looking at the lion's den that his dad has created in the north of England. Because if we want to look at mixed martial arts around the globe, I don't think there is any fiercer collaboration of heavyweights than there is with Andy Aspinall and Tom Aspinall currently. And it was on full display yesterday when Phil DeFries went out and extended his unbeaten streak to 10-0 in the KSW organisation, a very difficult and tough organisation. And you have a look at the mats that they've got up there. They've got the likes of Phil DeFries and Tom Aspinall and Mick Parkin, who's also on the card. And they've got some of the biggest bodies in the world.
And that's difficult to do, to get all of those guys.
The hardest weight class.
Not a lot of guys you can spar there, he's got a sort of super team. He is such they're doing, not just Tom, but everyone around him is doing everything right to ensure that he is on the path to success. And
Correct.
I think that's why he's going to get to gold. I've never been more confident about someone getting there in the UFC, getting to the top of the sport, because to me it's not an if, it's just a when, and the injury set him back, but I don't think that's going to stop him. I really don't.
And you hit a very good point there, because that's exactly what's happening now. And I've heard Tom speak about this before. The injury was very much a blessing in disguise, because not only has he not been able to train and compete with two legs for almost 5 years, I think it is. So not only has he been able to recover and be able to train properly and be able to throw a diversity of kicks, but it also gave him a lot of time on the sidelines to really rethink his own mental approach to the game, really rethink his own position in the sport. And he said that that time away really gave him the clarity to know that there's nothing that he wants more than to be heavyweight champion of the world. And now he has conditioned his entire life to make sure that everything is geared up to make him the heavyweight champion of the world. Whether it's the conversations he's having, whether it's the places he goes, the people he speaks to, or the training rooms that he's in. And we've seen now with the training room that his dad's curated, that he's going every single day with the sole mission and the sole goal of becoming the best heavyweight, not just in the division, but of all time. I genuinely believe that. And I think that's where we can look at the skill set of a Tom Aspinall, because yes, we've seen him strike. We can see him strike in both stances. He has a variety of a kicking game and clinches. And then we have a look at skills that he's done against high-level competition like Spivak, where he's landing knees and elbows at the same time.
That elbow, oh my word.
People don't do that in heavyweight MMA. That's not what people do. And you cannot get looks for that, because you can't find people with that dexterity and that striking. And this is why we're looking at matchups like Jon Jones with so much enthusiasm, because yes, he can wrestle. Yes, he can jiu-jitsu. And yes, he can strike. And he's starting to put that all together. And the thing that's so impressive with Tom is when he's in the cage, he's so present. He's so present. Active. And he's so coherent to what his coaches are saying and what they're telling him. He's sat there with Volkov. He's inside control. Just
he's looking at his dad.
Working on a straight arm lock, and he's looking over his dad, taking instructions and just making small adjustments against Alexander Volkov.
There's that one bit when he looks up his dad and then he just pounds him with an elbow. He's like, "Yep, stop that."
And I think when we have a look at Tom Aspinall, we have to remind ourselves that this is one of the most exciting. I can't even call him a prospect, because that's disrespectful.
He's not that anymore.
For the longest of times,
he's elite.
And there's been conversations at some times around if he can really do it and if Curtis Blades was going to do this and that. We haven't even seen him with two legs. Two-legged Tom Aspinall is a new mythical fighter, and he's being unlocked at UFC London. And I'm going on record to say that he's going to make this easy. He's going to make this look like it's an opponent that shouldn't even be in there, which is crazy, because Tybura is a very well-credentialed veteran in the UFC game. He's going to go out in the first round. He's going to get a stoppage, and he's going to remind fans why he's the biggest threat to Jon Jones or the heavyweight crown right now and for the future of the next 10 years. I think he's going to go out. How do you see it happening,
like specifically?
I think he's going to go out in the first round. I think he's going to be aggressive from the get with his hands. I think he's going to use his boxing. I think he may threaten a takedown or a level change, or at least get into a grappling exchange, a clinch exchange. I don't think he's necessarily even going to take him to the floor. In fact, I'm changing all my opinion as I say this out loud. I think he's going to go out in the first. I think he's going to set up his hands to get to a clinch position. I think he's going to take him down at will, and I think he's going to submit him or ground and pound him in one round.
It doesn't matter, does it? It's happening.
I don't think...
to me, it's happening.
I actually don't think that he's going to be able to get a ground and pound finish, because I don't think that there's going to be a world in where Tybura doesn't give him a submission opportunity that he's going to be able to just take so instantaneously.
Yeah,
it's just going to take less time to submit him than it's going to be able to punch 4, 5, 6 more times. And I think it's going to happen.
I will say, something that's so impressive, just to finish on that, about his Volkov win is the actual submission itself. You just don't see that. I mean, a straight arm lock is rare, but to see it from a half guard is such a... It's very, very impressive, because in a half guard, you're kind of... you're in that sort of in between spot. You know, there's things you can do offensively, submission wise, as you know, you can get something like an arm lock, but it's very difficult to get the finish there. Is generally speaking, you want to try and progress to side control or mount, where you can really start to apply the pressure and you know, get a submission, which is a lot harder to get out of, because in half guard you're in that sort of in between, and that's why that's even so more impressive. They just did it without. It was so instant. Grab the arm, you know, got underneath with the grip and just finished it like it was nothing, like it was a cakewalk against a guy like Volkov. It's comical how impressive it was. It was almost like he's just playing with a cheat code on or something. You know what I mean? I could not be more excited for him to come back. He is my favorite fighter and has been for a long time. He was my first YouTube video was on him.
True.
So I can't be more excited. He's going to hopefully, you know, I mean, there are some good fights in this card, but we can't sit and pretend that it's not for the price they're charging. Thank you, UFC. It's just criminal. He's one of the few fights that is worth it price wise on there. I think he's just worth just watching him alone, regardless of who he's fighting. Just watching him fight is a said it about Volkanovski last week. It's a privilege, and he is exactly the same.
True. And I think the first thing he said when he came out and got that submission was he looked shocked in all the interviews where people were so surprised that he got that, because he said, I get that from half guard all the time in training. And of course he does, because he's so strong and skilled that he gets so much force and leverage into his submissions that just minor adjustments and he's putting a lot of torque and pressure on your joints. And there's only so much you can take of that from a 260-pound beast. And we have to talk about his strength and conditioning. And the last thing that I'll touch on as well, which is so impressive with Tom Aspinall, and one thing that I really like about Tom Aspinall as well, and something which I think is an intangible difference which is going to help elevate his game and get him to the top and keep him there for so long. You look around him and who's in his camp and who's in his corner in terms of his strength and conditioning, in terms of his nutrition, in terms of his training. They're very close to Tom in terms of it's family or close friends or his dad. And I think with having such a tight-knit group and having so many people close to him that want nothing but the best and are operating at a very high level. I follow his strength and conditioning coach. I follow his nutritioning coach. Again, like I said, friends and family. So nothing but the best interest at heart. And I think that does make a difference as an intangible that you have to sort of mention, because, yeah, he's a freak. And like you said, one of the most exciting. But I think that pretty much wraps us up. Obviously, we've got we've got the Wimbledon finals going to enjoy now, but next week, we're going to have UFC London to look forward to.
Oh god! Hopefully, it will be with glowing praise.
It's going to be. Aspinall. Yeah, it's going to be. I actually,
you know, it's not even going to be. Hopefully, it is.
I don't see any crazy upsets on this card. I really don't. Sometimes I get a feeling where I can see a couple, but
you know what? Actually, real quick,
I think it's going to go.
I hate it that you ever since you talked about Dricus, because you're bringing me to your side, and I hate it. I keep thinking about it this week.
You're a fan.
I'm glad. No, I mean, I was a fan. I became a fan, but I'm starting to even agree with you
about the
Adesanya thing. I hate it. I hate it that you might be right.
Yeah.
But it's been growing on me. But yeah, we'll touch on that in the future.
But
you're wise.
That's what happens.
Wise on that.
But that's what happens when you look at Dricus's game. You start thinking, and to be honest, I didn't actually expect as many people to be saying that as there was when I actually was in the world of MMA this last couple of weeks. There were a lot of people saying the same thing, and I was actually kind of surprised, because I thought a lot of people would say, yeah, but I think because it was someone like Bobby Knuckles, it leaves, there's nothing to say after that. There just isn't, because he's so documented at winning in that division. And the last person to beat him in the last 10 years was Israel Adesanya, that you can't help but make those conclusions, you know?
Who knows, man?
But yeah, it's an exciting one. But yeah, good week for MMA. Fun week coming up with UFC London. We've got a lot on the horizon. I'm going to be down in Bournemouth this next weekend, actually, so I won't be able to catch all the fights live. I'm going to be watching. That's a lie. I'm going to be watching on my phone.
Yeah, of course you're going to be watching them, man. Come on.
I will be watching them all. I'm because my friend's fighting at 8 p.m. and I said I'll make a GBTV episode on him.
Yeah.
He's fighting for the belt down in Bournemouth, so I said I'll make an episode on him. Really annoyingly, he fights at 8, so I'm hoping that he fights a lot earlier and he gets the
you won't miss the main
round
event,
finish.
So.
Yeah, but I want to watch Nathaniel fight. I want to watch everyone fight.
Yeah, I don't think you'll miss them too.
I want to see Molly fight. I want to see
Yeah,
Nathaniel fight. I want to see Mark fight. There's a lot of people that I don't want to miss,
yeah,
and
that's
I
fair.
don't intend to. So I'll make sure that I get those. I'll get some good
Likewise,
footage, and we'll have a good week of wins for British
we
MMA.
will.
But yeah, Leo, has always been a pleasure. Thank you for tuning
Of course,
in.
mate.
Find us on Spotify. Find our
Thank
clips
you.
across both platforms on Leo Cooper and Casuals
We're
Corner.
getting there.
Yeah, we are getting there. So as always, look after yourselves and take care. Peace.